Now we're finally to the Korean War. This started in June of 1950. There's a huge amount of unrest against Syngman Rhee and his government right before this. On the 25th of June, there was a big mess on the border, and no one actually knows who fired the first shots. But North Korea was waiting for this basically because within hours of this border skirmish, the North Korean army was crossing into South Korea en masse. It took only a few hours before they basically overran the poorly supplied South Korean army. Syngman Rhee said everything was hunky-dory while he ran out of the capital with his flunkies, and then he blew up the bridge behind him when the bridge was full of people. This also trapped tons more people in front of the advancing North Korean army. So, yeah, like I said, not a good guy at all. But within a short period of time, North Korea controlled almost all of South Korea. I feel this was really glossed over in the movie. Like, they don't really mention this much. Like, they kind of just, oh, yeah, this is really what got the UN involved. Now, the last bit of South Korea they controlled during this time was around Busan, which is the very southern tip. You have the South Korean army and some American reinforcements there. And the one big advantage Americans had, though, was air superiority. They could fly their planes unmatched at this time. They blew up all the factories, the depots and warehouses, the transportation hubs, all across Korea. This meant that North Korea, of course, could not properly supply their troops, and because of the bombing, the North Korean troops had to really hide during the day. They could attack at night, but they couldn't really do anything during the day. This part is the part of the war where the American planes started bombing Chinese territory along the border as well, which of course upset China. They'd show this in the movie as well. Now, moving along to September 15th, American forces landed at Incheon, which is near Seoul. It's basically the airport now. They faced a rather light battle, actually. They thought they'd hit more, but the bombing in that and blowing up pretty much all the area left the North Koreans there with no supplies, so the American forces almost walked right over them. Now, this landing threatened to cut off the main North Korean forces down fighting around Busan, so they had to withdraw. They pulled back into North Korea. So North Korea had actually been warned that this landing would probably happen by China, but whether they didn't heed that warning or simply couldn't do anything about it, I don't know. And this is where the movie really starts. The North Korean army is collapsing at this point, much like the South Korean army had collapsed before. China at this time actually had a mutual defense treaty with the USSR. So there was a worry that if either the Soviet Union or China joined the war, it would lead to World War III. This is actually the reason the People's Volunteer Army was created. They could be saying, hey, this is an independent force. China's not officially in the war, so no World War III. Now, the original UN mission was to protect South Korea. They make a big deal of this in the movie, that, hey, you were supposed to just protect South Korea, really, not move across the border into North Korea. But at the time, the reunification of Korea was seen as something that could be done. Like, North Korea is falling apart, it's running away, we could do this. And this would be a Korea basically under American control. And so they saw, hey, this is worth the risk. And they thought that China saying, hey, we'll enter the phrase, if you go into North Korea, we will come in and fight. They're like, oh, you're not going to do that. That's all just bluster. Like, China's still a young nation at this time. They had a lot of other problems, and most of their forces were concentrated elsewhere as well. So America pushed the UN to get approval to fight back to North Korea and take control all of Korea and place it under Syngman Rhee. Yeah, we're back to that guy, Syngman Rhee, who now had control over South Korea again, and what he did was pretty horrible. He massacred anyone he even suspected of being connected with the North or sympathizing with communism. And we're not talking about people who actually supported troops or anything. We're talking about their families, their close friends, anybody that he thought was against him, he killed. And the American army pretty much sat back and let him do this. So Syngman Rhee was a real piece of work, let's just put it that way. And he was enabled, really was enabled.